So that's it. Game of Thrones is no more. After an explosive final season that has been a rollercoaster of spectacle, fire, and blood, not least amongst the fans, HBO's biggest show ever, hell, the biggest show ever, is now over, and the curtain has fallen on the Seven Kingdoms and the saga of the Starks. However you feel about the final season as a whole, there can be no denying that they stuck the ending. Those final moments were some of the most emotionally successful, satisfying scenes in television. And while the clamour for a redo from certain sections of fans will continue to grow, it was the right way to end it. And of course, there was a lot in there to process, but luckily, and for the final time, we're here once more to offer some insight. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and this is every hidden meaning in the Iron Throne explained. Number 10. The Lover's Embrace. The episode began as predicted, with the survivors surveying the cost of Dany's decimation of King's Landing. Primarily, we got to see this through Tyrion's eyes, and rightly so, because he had a huge hand in all of the bloodshed through his actions. And that's why the revelation of Cersei and Jaime's bodies was so surprisingly heartbreaking. For all of their shared evil, and there was a lot of it, the shot of them dead together in a lover's clinch with Jaime's arm protecting his love was the perfect allegory for their relationship. I just said allegory, didn't I? People are going to really take the piss out of me for that. And watching Tyrion weep over the siblings he had a fairly tumultuous relationship with for so long fit this strange narrative as well. In the end, allowing Brienne to write Jaime's history was a huge moment. Well, as much as she could and probably should have taken the opportunity to copy Regina George's burn book sign-off. Instead, she wrote his history to reclaim his name from the Kingslayer title. He died protecting his queen according to his official history and was finally freed of the image that wounded him so much, which he revealed to Brienne in his most vulnerable moments. Number 9. So Dany was mad then. In the wake of the penultimate episode, there was some speculation that Dany hadn't actually become the Mad Queen and that her reaction was merely a human response to what she'd been forced to go through. But now there can be no doubt that the correct way to think of Dany was the way Tyrion did. Yes, she was led to her mental state and every decision she made in King's Landing, but that didn't mean she wasn't also the Mad Queen. And Dany herself affirmed as much in her final interaction with Jon and her rousing speech to the Unsullied in the Dothraki. That speech in particular was not merely one of a vulnerable emotional victim, it was her war cry and her setting out her intention to continue to wage war under the guise of freeing the world. Her targets are named from Winterfell to Dorne, Lannisport to Qarth, the Summer Isles to the Jade Sea, and her intention to break the wheel has been warped by her belief that her agenda is righteous no matter the cost to innocence. As Tyrion tells Jon after his arrest, Dany was molded into her image by the advisors who sought to make a queen of her. She was always fire and blood, but they helped spur her on by cheering every time she used death to advance her cause. It was inevitable then that she'd see that as her means of liberation. Number 8. Fated blood and why Dany had to die. The conversation between Tyrion and Jon after the former is arrested is one of the most important in the entire show. As Tyrion says, he should have realized that our queen's nature is fire and blood, and Jon's response ties into the entire show's focus on the idea of predetermined futures and fate through blood. For 8 seasons, we've seen houses referred to as if they were separate races with defining characteristics, setting each other apart. We've seen grand, sweeping statements that are absolutely believed in this world as gospel based on that. A Lannister always pays their debts, the North remembers. Whole groups whose behaviours and thus fates are decided by who they are. No matter what Jon claims that house words are not stamped on our bodies when we're born and that's who we are, Tyrion was right about the need for her to die. She was fire and blood at her very core, and the show has been setting it up for a long time, both directly and indirectly. It's a slightly depressing fact, but by the logic of the Seven Kingdoms, you can only be good if you are from good blood, or if you consciously reject your blood, like Jon and Theon and Tyrion to a lesser extent. Otherwise, you're simply doomed to relive the sins of your fathers. That's why Dany had to die. Her aspirations were to be a Targaryen and to restore the Targaryens to power. She followed the fire and blood in her heart, and the only way to end that was to end her. Number 7. The shield that guards the realms of men. In the end, Jon probably wasn't the prince that was promised, but he was more important than that. He was the protector of men, as Tyrion so aptly put it, the shield that guards the realms of men. He could be the only one to kill Dany in the end as well. He was her blind spot, having willfully ignored the fact that he was the one who betrayed her in the first place, but by an ironic twist of fate, Jon was only able to get close to her because of his Targaryen blood. Despite how much he sought to defy his true nature, he wouldn't have got past Drogon guarding his mother and master were it not for his true lineage. In the end, that was where the scene of dragons accepting Jon and the dragon riding was leading. Not to a confirmation of the three-headed dragon, but to amplify the tragedy of what Jon had to do. As Tyrion told Jon, sometimes duty is the death of love, and that love was shaped perfectly to lead to the moment that he stuck a knife in her. Number 6, Drogon. The Iron Throne is no more, and the fact that it was Drogon who destroyed it also means a lot. In the moments after Dany's death, the dragon could have very easily killed Jon, but he didn't, because he placed no blame on Jon for what happened. The blame lay with the poisonous influence of the Iron Throne and what it represented. His retribution took aim at what really killed his mother. He's smarter than he might look, that Drogon. Drogon's survival in general is actually also pretty surprising as well. He's a nuclear weapon, and while the person who controls the big red button is no more, the idea of a dragon simply existing in the wild is a little strange. Not least because there was a pretty compelling theory suggesting that the dragons were only reborn to restore balance in the world when the Night King rose to power. There could even have been cause to have a hint that the dead weren't completely done with, given Drogon's survival, but it was the right thing to do to just leave it at that. And at least he wasn't just ignored completely. There's actually a wonderful hint when Bran leaves his small council at the end of the episode to find Drogon that he is going to try and walk into the creature as a means to discover where he is. It's a great low-key payoff to one of the most enduring theories of the show's entire run, and for them to not show it on screen is a lovely final subversion. Number 5, Bastards and Broken Things. I think we can all agree that Bran being chosen to be king is certainly surprising, but it does make total sense. Bran was the only candidate for the throne because he didn't actually want it, because he was a living library of the memories of all of mankind and the Seven Kingdoms, and because of the strength of his story, as Tyrion said. Because of his perseverance and how he would come across to the people of the realm, he deserved to fly as his prophecy suggested. It's important at this point to also mention the Fisher King, who in Arthurian legend was also known as the Wounded King or the Maimed King, and was the last in a long line charged of protecting the Holy Grail. He was a figure derived from Bran the Blessed, and in the legend was said to preside over a cursed, impotent land as a reflection of his own maiming. That would seem to put a slight down note on Bran's ending in the show, but it would appear that the show is instead seeking to subvert the image of the Fisher King by having him not be a genealogical cul-de-sac and instead having his successor being chosen by a council of the most powerful figures in the Seven Kingdoms. Perhaps the illusion exists to reaffirm why Bran was always the correct candidate in the first place, because his condition directly mirrors that of the kingdoms. Number 4, Sam the Historian and the Council of Outsiders. There was some concern a good few episodes ago, and now that the show was going to end with Sam putting his quill down and closing a book to reveal the title A Song of Ice and Fire, like Bilbo Baggins writing The Hobbit. And they kind of did that, with Sam contributing that title to the book at least, which was a fitting, cringeworthy end for that character. That said, each member of the small council gets a fitting end as well, which is a strange, wonderful revelation for this show. Sir Bronn becoming the Master of Coin is hysterical, on top of Sir Davos being the Master of Ships, the two silly bastards. Tyrion's the Hand, Brienne is Lord Commander, and Sam is the Grand Maester. Had you said that all of them would survive and would flourish in powerful positions at the start of this episode, you would have been laughed off the face of the internet. But it does all fit. All of them are somehow broken or ostracized in traditional terms. It's a small council full of outsiders and underdogs, and that's exactly as you'd think George R.R. Martin would have wanted it in the end. Number 3, Sansa and the Free North. As anyone in Newcastle will tell you, there's been a long-held desire for independence in the north, and it's particularly fitting that the region would be declared an independent kingdom under Sansa's rule at the end of Game of Thrones. As Sansa promised Dany, the North will no longer bend the knee to anyone, including one of their own, and she declares it a free kingdom, changing Bran's rule to that of the Six Kingdoms plus our mates in the North. And with that, we see Sansa's arc satisfyingly ended as she casts off the little bird image of her past. It's no accident that the final moments see her casting off the costume of mourning, black, shackled, and with her hair pinned high, for something softer, more colourful, and more personal, with its nod to Godswood as well. She even unpins her hair as a sign of transition. She's free just like the North. Number 2, the Unsullied go off to continue Dany's will. Despite the fact that Davos attempts to give the Unsullied and Grey Worm land in the Reach, they don't take it. Instead, the ending sees Grey Worm sailing the Unsullied to the Isle of Narth, and it isn't just a tribute to his lost love Missandei. Sure, there's a very romantic idea in there that Grey Worm is going to Narth because he promised that he and Missandei would have their own life away from everything, but it's more important and ultimately more romantic than that. Narth is one of the worst affected of all the known regions by slavers because of the nature of its people. Extreme pacifists by choice, they are known as the peaceful people, and unfortunately were also identified by slavers as perfect candidates to be slaves, making slave raids on the island a frequent occurrence. And because the people refused to abandon their pacifist way, they became even more targeted after the Doom of Valyria freed up the seas. The implication here then is that Grey Worm's love for Missandei and his duty to Dany will lead to a realization of both in Narth. He and the Unsullied will head there to protect its people, abandoning their warring ways in the process, though providing defense in Missandei's honor, while also continuing Dany's manifesto of being protectors of the enslaved people of the world. Number 1, the Starks get their happy ending. Even Jon. Considering everything that the Stark family went through over the past 8 seasons, it only seems right that each of the survivors got their happy endings, well, more or less. Bran's goal was to defy the Night King and live his life as the Three-Eyed Raven, protecting the memories of man and their legacy on the realm. Him ascending to the throne of the Six Kingdoms is the perfect means for him to continue that while also delivering on the prophecy that he would fly, at least in terms of power. Sansa casts off her abusive past and is free, restoring the rightful power and independence of the North, and even Jon gets what his heart truly wanted. Even though he loved Dany, as Tormund said, he had the true North in him, and his home was with the Free Folk. Admittedly, he's also a Night's Watchman, but when has that ever limited him to doing whatever the hell he wants anywhere? And as for Arya, she was never going to be someone else's idea of what she should be. Her story runs in parallel to Nymeria's, and her roaming free and seeking to explore the parts of the world that haven't yet been touched by map markers absolutely fits her free spirit. And it is right that each closes out their own books on a positive, satisfying note. And in the end, it closes where it began as well, in the frozen North, only now with a dream of spring and not a threat of winter to come. So that's it, that's the final breakdown of Game of Thrones Season 8. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you enjoy this season overall, and has this finale maybe turned your opinions around on the whole thing? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. I have had a huge amount of fun doing these episodes every week, and I want to give a huge shout out to Simon Gallagher, who has busted his balls writing these breakdowns from the early hours of the morning until coming into work and then giving them to me and making me look decent and like I can actually say things. So thank you, Si, for writing these. I've had a lot of fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well, and I'll see you soon. Bye.